A Mescalero Apache woman was being hunted until a deserted soldier became her only hope for freedom. The desert sun had not yet risen, but the heat pressed down like a heavy hand. Naeli moved silently, her bare feet leaving only faint marks in the shifting sand. The world around her was harsh, cruel, and unyielding, but she had learned to read it like an old friend. Every rock, every dune, every whisper of wind carried meaning, and right now every whisper carried danger. Behind her, the faint hum of drones cut through the morning stillness. They were fast, precise, and unfeeling, hunting her as if she were a piece of prey in a machine's game. Naeli did not run blindly. She knew the desert. She knew how to disappear in plain sight. She pressed herself into a low trench, letting the sand swallow her form. The drones passed, their sensors scanning, but they found nothing. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with awareness. Every beat reminded her she was alive, and alive meant she could fight, escape, survive. She adjusted the strap of her satchel, feeling the weight of the small metallic device tucked inside. That device was worth more than the lives of the hunters pursuing her. It contained knowledge, secrets of terraforming technology that no corporation had the right to possess. Secrets humans were not supposed to have, but she had learned them anyway. And now they wanted her dead. Naeli paused for a moment on a high ridge, her dark eyes scanning the horizon. The sun was creeping up, spilling gold and red over the barren landscape. She could see the tracks of the hunters, etched sharply into the sand like scars. They were relentless. She had hours, maybe less, to reach the old outpost. The outpost was abandoned now, its walls crumbling, but it held a chance for freedom. She began her descent, careful not to slip on loose stones. Her mind worked faster than her legs. She calculated the angles of approach, the likely paths of the drones, the places where shadows and rock could hide her. Every step was deliberate. Every breath measured. The desert was her ally, and she treated it with the respect it demanded. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence. A metallic clatter, soft but sharp. Naeli froze. Her instincts screamed. Not from above, not from the drones, but below. She crept forward, the sand muffling her steps. There, half buried in a shallow depression, lay a figure. A man. His armor was scratched and dusty, his exosuit scorched in places. He breathed unevenly, and blood trickled from a shallow cut on his temple. Naeli approached cautiously. The desert had taught her not to trust strangers, but something in the soldier's face stopped her hand from reaching for her dagger. He was human, broken and alone, like she was. And for a moment, the hunt seemed to fade around her. She knelt beside him, scanning for injuries. "You're alive," she said softly, though she did not expect him to respond. He coughed, a harsh sound, and tried to lift his head. His eyes opened, sharp and wary. Blue, unusual in this sun-baked world. Who are you?" he asked, voice strained. "I could ask you the same," Naeli replied. "You're not with them, are you?" He shook his head weakly. "No, I deserted. I shouldn't even be here." His gaze drifted toward the ridge behind her. They'll come." Naeli studied him. Deserted soldiers were dangerous, unpredictable, and sometimes more ruthless than those who hunted. But in that moment, she saw instinct, the kind of grit that matched her own, and she made a decision. "You'll need water," she said, retrieving a small canteen from her bag. He drank greedily, shivering despite the heat. She examined the exosuit more closely. It was advanced, a relic of interplanetary wars. "This armor, you could use it to help us," she said carefully. "If we work together, we might make it to the outpost." The man nodded slowly. "Karin," he said, finally giving her his name. "Karin Vex."
"And you are?"
Naeli. She did not offer more than that. Names were precious, like maps of the soul. To give hers away too easily was dangerous. They moved together, Naeli leading, Corin stumbling beside her. She taught him how to step silently over sand that could betray his weight, how to use the dunes for cover. He listened, hesitant at first, then with growing respect. He had military training, yes, but the desert was not a battlefield he had ever understood. And she guided him through it. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, turning the sand into a mirror that reflected heat into their faces. The drones returned, their engines whining. Naeli signaled Karin to drop into a shallow canyon. They pressed themselves against the rocks as the machines swept over the ridge. One drone's sensors glowed briefly as it scanned, then moved on. Naeli exhaled quietly. "Close," she whispered. They emerged on the other side, and Karin looked at her, amazed. You're like a ghost," he said. Nahali smiled faintly. "Or a shadow," she corrected. "We survive because we understand the land. The land does not lie." But their respite was brief. In the distance, dust clouds rose, the bounty hunters, relentless as ever, adapting to their evasions. They were organized, ruthless, and fully human in their cunning. They had seen many prey flee, but they had never faced one who was more than human. Naeli and Karin would have to be clever, faster, smarter. Naali led him to a narrow ravine, barely wide enough to hide two people. "We rest here," she said, "but not for long. We move when the shadows grow." She knelt, pulling a small device from her satchel. It hummed softly, a map of the surrounding desert projected in thin holographic lines. "This," she explained, "will guide us to the outpost. But the path is dangerous. Traps, loose rocks, heat pockets. The desert does not forgive mistakes." Karin nodded, studying the projection. His fingers brushed over the holographic lines. "I've seen battlefields," he said, "but never like this. This is alive." Naali glanced at him, then back at the rising sun. The heat would be unbearable by midday. They would need to move before the drones adapted to their location. And there was another danger, one Karin did not yet understand. The desert itself could kill if underestimated. Every sandstorm, every rock slide, every shadow held risk. As they rested, Naeli told him fragments of her story. Her people, her knowledge of the land, her mission to protect the secrets in her satchel. Karin shared pieces of his past, enough to explain why he had deserted, why he could not return to the military faction that hunted him as a traitor. Together, they began to form a fragile trust. By late morning, the heat was intense. Naeli led the way through a hidden passage, a path she had memorized from years of survival training and stories from elders. The canyon walls rose sharply on either side, cutting off sunlight in some places, providing momentary relief from the blistering sun. Suddenly, a low hum vibrated through the rocks. Drones! They had found the ravine. Naeli gestured for Karin to drop to the ground. They pressed themselves against the side walls, holding their breath as the machines swept overhead. One drone hovered briefly, scanning the shadows. Naali held her hand over Karin's, steadying him. The hum faded, and the drones moved on. They had survived. But the danger was far from over. The outpost was still miles away, and the hunters would not give up. Naeli looked at Corin. "You have to trust me completely," she said. Corin met her gaze, blue eyes steady despite exhaustion. "I do." Naeli nodded, feeling a rare surge of hope. Two unlikely allies, forced together by fate, pursued through a desert that was both enemy and friend. Ahead lay the outpost, a place of refuge, or perhaps a trap. But for now, survival meant moving, hiding, and outsmarting those who hunted them. And Naeli was determined that she would not be caught. As they pressed onward, the sun climbed higher, shadows growing shorter. The desert stretched endlessly around them, indifferent to their struggle, yet alive with hidden opportunities for those who knew how to see. Naeli and Corin moved silently, weaving through the sands, ghosts among the dunes. The hunt had begun, and it was far from over. The desert heat pressed down with unforgiving weight as Naeli and Corin continued their slow march toward the abandoned outpost. Every step was calculated, every movement cautious. Corin's exosuit, though battered, offered some protection against the sun, but it was heavy and made silence nearly impossible. Naeli had to guide him carefully, showing him how to move with the wind and the shadows. "You have to keep your weight on the balls of your feet," Naeli said, adjusting the straps of her satchel. "The sand will betray you if you don't. The drones can detect even the smallest vibrations." Corin swallowed hard. "I never thought sand could be dangerous," he muttered. But he followed her instructions with surprising obedience. He had survived battles on distant worlds, but the desert was different. It had no mercy. It watched. It judged. And it could kill. They moved through a narrow canyon, the sun casting long shadows against the rocks. The walls rose sharply, blocking some of the light, but the air was still thick with heat. Corin wiped sweat from his brow, glancing at Naeli. "How do you do it?" he asked quietly. "How do you survive here?" Naeli's gaze swept the canyon walls. "The desert teaches you," she said softly. "It tests you. Every rock, every dune, every whisper of wind tells you something. You just have to listen."
Corin frowned. "I listen, but I don't hear anything."
"Just sand and heat." She smiled faintly. "Then you're not listening hard enough." For hours they moved, the silence only broken by the occasional bird call or the shifting of sand. Naeli led Corin to a small spring hidden in the canyon. The water was shallow but clear, a precious gift in this desert world. She gestured for him to drink. Corin knelt, cupping the water in his hands, drinking greedily. "This is the first time I felt safe in days," he admitted, glancing around nervously. "The hunters. They're close, aren't they?" Naeli nodded. "They are. They never rest. But they don't know everything. They don't know this land like I do. And if we move carefully, we can stay ahead." As they rested, Corin examined his exosuit. Its systems flickered weakly, some functions offline. "I can get this working again," he said. "Might give us an edge?" Naeli raised an eyebrow. "We don't need gadgets to survive, Corin. But if it helps, I won't stop you." Corin worked quietly, repairing circuits and adjusting servos. Naeli watched him, studying his hands and the way he moved. There was a precision in him, a discipline she respected. He was no ordinary soldier. He had survived battles that most people couldn't imagine, and now he was surviving the desert alongside her. By late afternoon, the sun blazed overhead. Naeli knew they needed to find shelter before the heat became unbearable. She spotted a narrow cave in the canyon wall, its entrance partially hidden by rocks and sand. "There," she said, "we rest there until the sun drops." Inside, the cave was small but safe. The walls were cool, the shadows deep. Corin leaned against the rock, taking a long breath. "I didn't think I'd make it this far," he said. "Not alone, anyway."
You're not alone, Naeli reminded him.
We watch each other's backs. For a moment, the silence stretched between them, filled only by the occasional drip of water from the cave's ceiling. Then Corin spoke again. "Why are they after you, Naeli? What's so important that they want you dead?" Naeli hesitated. She had told Corin fragments of her story, enough to explain her survival, but not the full truth. The secret in her satchel could change the fate of worlds.
"I have knowledge," she said carefully. "Knowledge some people would kill for."
"I'm trying to protect it." Corin nodded slowly. "I understand. I've seen what people will do for power. I ran from it." "You're lucky to have survived this long." Naeli looked at him. "And you? Why did you desert? You could have stayed with your faction, fought for them."
He shook his head. "I couldn't."
They weren't fighting for people. They were fighting for control, for profit. I couldn't be part of it anymore. So I left, and now I'm just trying to survive, like you." The moment of trust between them deepened, but it was fragile. Both knew that in this desert, mistakes could be fatal. They could not afford to rely solely on each other's words. Actions mattered more than promises. As the sun dipped lower, Naeli and Corin left the cave. The desert shifted in the twilight, shadows stretching across the dunes. Naeli led them to a ridge overlooking the path to the outpost. From here she could see the faint glow of dust clouds far in the distance. The hunters, still searching, still relentless. "We have to move carefully," she said. "They adapt quickly. They've learned some tricks, but not all. We can use the terrain to our advantage." Corin studied the landscape, then looked at her. "Teach me," he said simply. "Show me how to read this land." First you learn to listen. The wind tells you where life is. The sand tells you who has passed. The rocks...
They hold secrets if you pay attention. For hours, she taught him.
Corin learned to identify subtle shifts in sand patterns, the faint scratch marks of desert animals, the way shadows changed with the wind. Slowly he began to move more like her, cautious, deliberate, aware. He stumbled at first, but Naeli's patience never wavered. Night fell, and the desert cooled. Stars spread across the sky, bright and cold. They made camp in a shallow depression hidden from view. Corin sat quietly, gazing at the sky. "I never imagined a desert could be this. Alive," he said. Naeli smiled faintly. "It is alive, and it will test you, but if you listen, it will guide you too." Their rest was short-lived. A faint vibration in the sand reached Naeli's senses before Corin even noticed. She stood quickly, scanning the horizon. A drone swept across the ridge above them, its lights scanning, searching. "Move," she whispered urgently. Corin followed without question. They slipped into the shadows, moving silently as the drone passed. It hummed, scanned, and then moved on. As they continued, Naeli realized something. The hunters were not just persistent, they were adapting. Each move she made to hide, each trick she used to evade them, they were learning. The drones, the trackers, the hunters, they were studying her, predicting her movements.
"We can't just run," she told Corin. "We have to fight smart."
We have to outthink them, not just outrun them. Corin nodded, understanding the gravity of their situation. Then we use the desert, he said. We turn it into our weapon. Naeli smiled faintly. Exactly. But it will be dangerous. One mistake. She let the words hang in the air. They pressed on through the night, moving under the cover of darkness. The desert, which had seemed harsh and unyielding in the daylight, became a maze of shadows, rocks, and hidden paths. Naeli led Corin through narrow canyons over rocky ridges and across sand dunes that would have broken lesser travelers. Finally, in the pre-dawn hours, they saw it, the abandoned outpost. Its walls were crumbling, metal beams rusted, and the doors hanging loosely on their hinges. Yet, to Naeli, it was a promise, a chance at safety, even if temporary. They approached cautiously. Corin's exosuit hummed quietly, its systems partially restored. Together, they entered the outpost, scanning every corner for signs of danger. Inside, the air was stale but cool, a relief after the desert heat. "This will do for now," Naeli said. "We rest here, plan our next move, and prepare for what comes next. The hunters won't give up easily." Corin nodded, understanding. They were safe for the moment, but the desert, the hunters, and the secrets they carried would not allow peace for long. As they settled in, Naeli allowed herself a rare moment of hope. For the first time since the hunt began, she felt a flicker of confidence. With Corin at her side, she might survive this. She might escape, and she might live to protect what mattered most. The desert wind howled outside, whispering through broken walls and shattered windows, but inside the outpost, two unlikely allies prepared to face the trials ahead. Together, dawn broke slowly over the desert, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Naeli and Corin emerged from the outpost cautiously. The walls had offered temporary safety, but the desert outside was alive and the hunters would not wait. Every sound, every ripple in the sand could be a threat. Naeli scanned the horizon. "We have to keep moving," she said. "They're adapting.
They've learned some of our tricks.
If we linger, we'll be trapped." Corin adjusted his exosuit, its systems humming weakly. "I can help this armor do more than protect," he said. "I can use it to fight back, even in the sand." Naeli nodded. "Good. But remember, machines aren't the only danger. The desert itself can kill if you're careless." Together, they moved through a narrow canyon that led to a series of dunes. Naeli taught Corin how to read the desert signs, faint tracks left by desert animals, the way wind shifted sand to reveal hidden paths, and subtle changes in temperature that hinted at hidden dangers. Corin adapted quickly, his military training helping him notice patterns she had missed. As they climbed a ridge, a sudden vibration shook the sand beneath their feet. Naeli froze, signaling Corin to drop low. The ground hummed faintly, a drone sweeping close, scanning the desert. They pressed against the rocks, holding their breath as the machine passed overhead. "We can't keep running forever," Corin whispered. "We have to fight smart." Naeli nodded. "We will."
"The desert will help us if we let it." They moved on, finding shelter behind a series of jagged rocks.
Here, Naeli began setting small traps. Using hidden pits covered by sand and carefully placed rocks, she created hazards that could slow or mislead the drones. Corin watched, learning quickly. Together they rigged a small system where the drones would trigger noise sensors in the wrong direction, buying them time to escape. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. relentless and merciless. They paused briefly near a small rock outcropping. Nali used a piece of old tech she had salvaged to scan for movement, a small device that amplified vibrations in the sand. The signal was faint but clear. Hunters approaching. "Time to move," she said, and they sprinted across a dune, shadows stretching behind them. Corin's exosuit gave him a burst of speed, helping him keep pace with Naeli. But the desert was treacherous. Loose sand, hidden rocks, and sudden drops tested their endurance and coordination. They reached a dry riverbed that offered some cover. Naeli taught Corin how to use the terrain to their advantage, sliding down steep banks to mislead the trackers and using shadows to hide their movements. They moved silently, yet the hunters adapted. Drones hovered closer, their sensors scanning every ridge and rock. Suddenly, one drone emitted a piercing signal. Naeli grabbed Corin's arm. "Run!" she shouted. They sprinted toward a narrow canyon, sand kicking up behind them. The drone followed, relentless. Naeli led them into a small side passage barely wide enough for two people. The walls pressed close, blocking the drone's sensors. They stopped to catch their breath. Corin's exosuit was overheating, and Naeli's lungs burned from the exertion. Yet, they had survived, for now. Naeli studied the canyon walls, looking for ways to turn the environment to their advantage. "We can use the rocks," she said. "We can collapse part of the canyon and trap the drone. But it's risky." Corin nodded. "I trust you. Let's do it." Using ropes, rocks, and precise timing, they triggered a small rock slide. Dust and debris rained down, and the drone screeched as it crashed into the barrier. The canyon was quiet once more. "That should slow them," Naeli said, her voice steady. "But they won't give up. They'll adapt again." They moved deeper into the desert, using every trick at their disposal. Naeli's knowledge of the terrain allowed them to navigate through hidden paths and avoid open areas where drones could detect them. Corin contributed by using his exosuit to amplify their speed and carry supplies, combining technology with human instinct. At night, they rested in a small depression, shadows of the dunes stretching across the sand. Corin cleaned the exosuit, repairing circuits and reinforcing its sensors. Naeli prepared a small meal from preserved rations, her hands moving deftly even in exhaustion. "I never thought I'd work with someone like you," Corin said quietly. "I've always been alone. Out here, though, I'm learning that survival isn't just about strength. It's about understanding the world and trusting others." Naeli smiled faintly. "You're learning fast. But trust is earned. Remember that." As they slept, the desert seemed to watch. The wind whispered through the dunes, carrying the faint hum of drones in the distance. The hunters were relentless, adapting to every trap, every maneuver. Naeli and Corin knew that each day would grow harder, that the desert itself would demand more of them. The next morning, Naeli led Corin to a series of rocky outcroppings overlooking a wide plain. From here, they could see the faint glimmer of the abandoned outpost in the distance, their next goal. But between them and the outpost lay open desert, a place where drones could sweep freely and hunters could ambush without warning. "We have to cross it," Naeli said, "but carefully. Every step matters." Corin adjusted his exosuit, checking the sensors and systems she had helped him repair. "Then let's make these steps count," he said. Together, they descended into the plain, moving slowly, using rocks and small dunes as cover. Naeli's eyes constantly scanned for movement, reading the subtle signs in the sand and wind. Corin followed, learning to anticipate dangers and react instinctively. Hours passed. The heat intensified, and exhaustion threatened to slow them. But Nale pressed on, teaching Karin how to find pockets of shade, how to ration water, how to move like a shadow among shadows. Suddenly, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Naeli froze, recognizing the signature of a hunter unit. Drones hovered above, scanning the plain. The hunters had adapted again, tracking their path with new precision. "They know we're coming," she whispered. "We have to act fast." Using the terrain, Naeli led Karin through a series of narrow passes and hidden gullies. They created diversions, kicked up clouds of sand, and misled the drones with false tracks. Karin's exosuit amplified their movements, allowing them to sprint short distances when necessary, but always under Naali's careful guidance. Finally, they reached a rocky canyon that would serve as a temporary refuge. Naale used her knowledge to set traps along the approach, rocks balanced precariously, hidden pits, and dust sensors that would alert them if the hunters drew near. "We bought ourselves some time," she said, her voice steady but low. "But it won't last. They're clever, and they won't give up easily." Corin looked at her, admiration clear in his eyes. "You're incredible," he said. "I've survived wars, but nothing prepared me for this. The desert. It's alive, and you know its every secret." Naale nodded. "And we'll use every secret it has, together." As night fell, they rested in the canyon, the stars stretching across the sky like a sea of light. The desert wind whispered through the rocks, carrying distant echoes of drones and hunters still searching. Naeli and Corin knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and new tests of their survival skills. But for the first time since the hunt began, they felt a sense of hope. Together they had fought the desert and the hunters, using both instinct and ingenuity to survive. And together they would face whatever came next. The desert had tested them, and it was far from done.